back on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to talk some more football, but this time college football. For one of the first times on this show. If you missed the first segment, I recapped some of the Chip Shots stories that I brought up, some comments made by Justin Fields that he made on the St. Brown's Brothers podcast the last few days. And I also brought up the idea of Devontae Adams possibly being traded to the New York Jets and my reactions to that. And now we can get into some college football around the biggest story probably recently in college football and just will be the main story probably going on for a while in college football. It's NIL, the transfer portal, and everything, the feelings surrounding that. But just to jump into it now, Adam Schefter reported recently just some transactions of college coach, the USC running back coach, Keel McDonald, was being hired to the Chargers staff for Jim Harbaugh. And, that transaction, that event that happened, nothing seems wrong with that. But then a few minutes later, Adam Schefter retweeted that news that he posted, and he posted something I thought was pretty interesting, just because he said in his tweet that a trend that has emerged recently is that many college coaches are tired of the transfer portal, the NIL money, and the new NCAA world, and prefer to work in the NFL. Many college coaches already have left. Many more want to. And that last part was the most interesting part to me. Many more want to leave the situation in college football as it stands now. And I'm not going to go into whether I think it's right or wrong with NIL, the transfer portal, and everything, just because it's a lot to unpack and it's a lot to give my opinion on because, on one hand, you can see the logic of it, these players getting paid for all they do, especially for everything the colleges benefit from these players. Some of the biggest stars in college football benefit their schools a lot, and you can see why the players should get something back from it. But now it's gotten to a point where it kind of gets out of hand in some instances. You got a lot of players going somewhere for just the money, not really investing in the colleges that they go to, the atmosphere, the community, the student body, everything like that. It's getting to a point now where most of it is just based on that. And that's kind of where everyone gets lost in this subject. Some people feel that's wrong. Some people feel it's right. And, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But this quote was pretty interesting because of that, because it just touches on the whole situation. And something else that I saw more recently was EA Sports is coming out with the new college football game. That was announced a few days ago. The trailer was announced for that a few days ago. And a recent report came out that said EA Sports finalized its NIL plan and will begin the opt-in process for over 11,000 college sports athletes players, and all those players that opt in to be in the game, to provide their notoriety, their name, image, and likeness, and stuff like that. All those players that opt in will receive $600 initially, plus a free copy of the game, which is pretty sweet. I'm not gonna lie, and they'll also, more importantly, be paid annually on top of that, as long as they're on a college roster, still playing college football, and will receive an annual pay. I didn't see how much it was, but the report was they'll continue to be paid almost like a salary if they just are in the game and opt into that process. And that it's pretty wild to think of what point we're at now because of this scenario with NIL and college football transferring for more money and stuff like that. It's tough because, like I mentioned before, the players, you want them to get compensated for something, and the coaches are frustrated now because you can imagine how hard it is to build something special, a program that you're really invested in, and then not being sure what these players, these kids really are thinking in the moment. If they're not getting playing time, a lot of them will just take their stuff and leave. No, it's becoming more rare to see players accept that they're not the stars, coming from a situation in high school where most of these guys playing in college at a Division I level are the stars in their high school program. They see a lot of success. They're always playing. Now when they get to college, they expect the same thing. And if they don't get it, they'll pick up their things and leave. None of them will stick around, fight for a spot, or really invest in a student program or a college program and be loyal to that, as we've seen in the past before NIL. And it's a shame to see that, but also on top of that, to build on that, now with college basketball starting, Jay Billis is on ESPN a lot more. He's more of a prominent figure in that because of the season we're in with college basketball. And they asked him about it on the Rich Eisen show, about what he thinks is a good fix for it. And he simply said to pay these college athletes as if they were actual players, hand them out contracts, and make them loyal, make them responsible for that contract that they sign. And at this point, because one of the things he said was that college amateurism at this point is basically dead. It almost doesn't exist anymore, and because of that, you have to treat these players like they're professionals in some aspect, because of the kind of money that they're bringing in for themselves, the kind of attention they're bringing in for the colleges, and the business side of college football itself is taken over really at this point. And that idea that these players are student athletes, they're getting a chance to not only go to school, but to also live out their dream and play sports. You can almost agree with it that it's gone because of the amount of money and the business side of it. And just on his point that he made about contracts, I think it was more of a spurt in the moment, the way he said it. If you really think about it, having contracts in there for student athletes might even make this problem worse. And in my opinion, it could probably turn this into just college football losing its special quality that it has among fans and among everybody in the sports world that watches college football, because it's, kids, young athletes playing the sport that they love and, getting a chance to compete for championships, build themselves up, learn life lessons through college sports and with college coaches, and just learning special stuff to mature in their process of not only being better players but better humans and stuff like that. That aspect is almost being totally erased, and I think with contracts now, you're going to take away all the mystique around college football and what it's all about, the students, the student bodies and investing and stuff like that, and almost turn it into like the minor leagues, the G League for basketball terms. If you were to go that route and, hold these players accountable for contracts and clauses in their contract, special rules for them, then you got to include other things, probably guaranteed money at some point with college football and basketball for some of these guys. And then at that point, why would someone go to college if it's basically the same thing as going into, the G League right away or going overseas right away? If you monopolize it all just to limit the transfers and some smaller schools not being fairly treated or have a fair chance of getting some of these bigger athletes because of the money available, I think you would erase everything, all the specialness that college football has in totality. Something else that I read on it, a possible solution for this and how college football and everybody can look for a solution for this was, I found an article from the Columbus Dispatch. The author of it was Rob Aller, and he gave some solutions that I thought were worth mentioning on here that I thought were really good ideas. One of them was eliminating immediate eligibility upon transferring. It was actually a rule before 2021, and then the new rule changes came in, and it wasn't. They took it away, and it's a simple rule that was already working in college football before NIL and transfers got to this point. And, I think, first off, it would limit the amount of transfers that you see. a lot more players would have to, once they make the decision, know that they have to commit to it a lot more, because if they don't and want to change their mind and want to get out of there, they might lose a year. And some people might think that's unfair because, you're not in college for that often and it's a special time. But, you could argue that point and say, if it's so special and if these players truly mean that they want to go to a program and really build it up, then, there has to be something in there to make sure that they're held to that word, because these programs, these colleges invest a lot in them, and if they were to just lose them, especially at a smaller school, it's a lot of time wasted and it's a lot of steps back if, their whole program, their whole roster is gone, transferred after a year or two. Another thing that he said was that just shortening the transfer portal period in general. Technically, it's at 45 days now, just on the rules, but I think it should be shorter. I think it should be a month, 4 weeks, 28 days to be exact. Again, because you shorten that time of these players potentially getting other offers if they've already committed. You limit the amount of coaches probably that can get access to these players, because there's a lot of players out there and these coaches have to go to different places, and shortening the amount of time will limit how many coaches these players talk to and how many just opportunities they get to really decide. Because at the end of the day, you have to remember that these athletes, these players, are 18 to 23 years old in that period, and they're at a very important part of their life. And of course, you want them to take it seriously, but you got to still remember how many people are making life-changing decisions at that age and making them wisely. I'm sure everyone would agree that making decisions there in your early 20s, late teens are definitely not your wisest decisions. A lot of impulse and just short-term thinking goes into that. And this is starting to become a lot more serious if they want to incorporate contracts like Jay Billis said. And the amount of money that's coming in, it's getting more serious. But at the same time, you have to remember to not make it, just to not monopolize it so much that, you eliminate that's something special that college football has at the end of the day. Because I think a lot of people are drawn to just that, athletes playing, young people, young players, kids playing their sports in college. It's a lot special just from what you see on College Game Day and the scenes you see around campuses, how special college football is, college basketball, and all the college sports, how united it makes all these schools, everyone gets together, and it's a whole special event. You want people, athletes, to build on that and just make that a whole thing, a special event, and you kind of lose some of that connection from the fans to these players if every year they're getting a new starting quarterback, a new running back that they can't really make that connection with, like in the pros or something like that. And I think that would really harm the sport, harm college sports in general. But that's sort of where it is right now. I thought those comments were interesting, and I thought it raised this question of, how far will this go before a misstep is taken and everything gets either a lot worse and you can't come back from it, or you do something now to limit the amount of harm you can do to some schools, some players, because it's getting close to that point, and these players are starting to make a lot of money, and it's the business side of it, unfortunately, that you have to watch out for. But let me know any other things that I might have missed around this whole situation, things you thought were right, some things maybe that other things you want to be changed in college football and college sports, and just your thoughts on it. That'll wrap it up for that segment. We're going to stick with the college football theme when I come back from another break, this time honing in more on Caleb Williams and his situation, not really draft-wise, but personal-wise, if you want to put it that way. He has decided to not go with an agent to represent himself, and I'll dive more into that topic after I take the second break of the show. But don't go anywhere. I have more stuff on Caleb Williams and regarding the draft on the other side of it. So I'll be right back after this short break.